Hello and welcome to Banfield. Who says there was foul play on the Rust movie set? Not the district attorney, that's for sure. She has just thrown a big bucket of cold water on the inflammatory comments that were made by the lawyers for that young armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. But that is not stopping those lawyers from sticking to their sabotage claims and throwing in some wild new theories for good measure. And while the criminal side is being sorted out, pack the wheelbarrows full of money because the lawsuits have just begun. That gaffer on the movie, the one who befriended the late cinematographer and who called out the safety shortcuts, he is the first to file suit against Alec Baldwin and almost 24 others. His name is Serge Svetnoy, and he claims he personally suffered severe emotional distress because of the negligence of other crew members and production staff. And while I could go on and on, I'm going to stop right here and bring on some legal luminaries that you might well recognize.
It's certainly not our job to decide how much profit he can make when she freely and voluntarily accepts the deal.
I think we should look at contracts if they're unconscionable.
Saying it wasn't unconscionable.
No, it was not. No. It was not unconscionable.
Oh, I would agree with you based upon the evidence that
So what'd you get us all agitated for?
You misunderstand my style.
No,
my
you're
style,
being obtuse. I'm
my
only kidding.
style is very clear. I ask questions that I think are issues.
Well, you hear them, and you're going to hear more of them. Judge Tanya Acker, Judge Patricia DiMango, and Judge Michael Corriero. They deal with the hottest legal issues of the day. They're the stars of TV's Hot Bench. Welcome to all three of you. I'm so glad because I don't know what happened this week in courtrooms across the country, but it was a little off the rails. Let me just start with the Alec Baldwin story. The lawyers for the armorer are using words like sabotaged and framed and tampered, and then, you know, the hidden meaning is murder, all while the DA is saying, no, absolutely not. I just don't understand how this happens when they're hearing the DA, but carrying on and amping it up even further. Tanya, let me start with you, your reaction to hearing that.
Well, look, I mean, if any criminal defendant, well, let me back up because we don't have a charge yet, but anybody in this kind of situation is going to look for a reason why they shouldn't be liable. So it's all well and good for these sabotage theories to be floated about, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to put forward facts. They will have to put forward facts to support that theory. If there are facts to support that theory, then the DA should consider it. If there are no facts to support it, then it really, it can't go very far in a legal case. That's not how courts work.
That's not how courts work. You are right. And the funny thing is that this is one of those high-profile cases. It's playing out in the media before there is even a charge, as you so rightly pointed out, Tanya. So I want to play for you what the DA said on Good Morning America, because it sounded to me like she was pretty darn clear. Don't float your conspiracy theories to try to deflect whatever it is you're trying to deflect. Have a listen to this.
I know that some defense attorneys have come up with conspiracy theories and have used the word sabotage. We do not have any proof.
Do you believe sabotage is a possibility?
No.
Okay, well, that's pretty clear. Patricia, I'm wondering if there are defense attorneys representing all sorts of people on that set right now, on the Baldwin set, taking copious notes and getting ready for the day they may hear there are charges and, you know, possibly indictments.
Actually, there are, and there's going to be any number of people that are going to be held responsible or be sought after to be held responsible for what happened here. And the interesting part is that lawyers often want to put out their information to taint whatever jury pool might actually end up happening at some point. And it's almost like the more you say it, the more likely someone will believe it. And right now, the armorer seems to be the person who is most responsible for handling the weapon directly. That's that person's job to check the state of load. The armorer is actually trained and certified in doing all this. And so deflecting from Ms. Gutierrez would certainly be something that would be in the interest of her attorneys. And the more people that you can point the finger at, the more you dilute the case against your own client. And, you know, prosecutor could say anything she wants right now. She doesn't know how the evidence is actually going to turn out.
Yeah, we're still pretty early into this game. I know it doesn't feel like it on TV, but these cases can often go months and months before there's a charge. Heck, I've seen cases not charged for years until the evidence comes in. The clock starts ticking. Yeah, I mean, you have a right to speedy trial, and if you get charged, you got to have some goods behind it. Okay, so I want to play for you something that happened, and I was expecting it. I know the three of you were expecting it. You all know how the game works. But the gaffer on that set, the one who's been so outspoken, the one who was really close by and said that Helena Hutchins died in his arms. His name is Serge Svetnoy. He is the first to launch a suit. I am expecting there will be likely many more, but I want to just let you hear what his attorney had to say when they made the announcement. Take a peek.
This lawsuit is not about his desire to make money at all. This lawsuit is to bring awareness to a problem and to prevent it in the future. This lawsuit is to make these kinds of unsafe conditions that happen too much on movie sets stop now.
Okay, Michael Corriero, Alec Baldwin is one of the many defendants. I don't think that surprises you. But at the same time, if you were judging this case and trying to sort out who really has the exposure in all of this, who has the money bags, well, this is Hollywood, and, you know, Alec Baldwin has some money, but this was a cheap production. What would you be thinking right about now?
Well, taking the attorney's representations at face value, I think he's framing his lawsuit in a very noble way, that the purpose behind it is to make sure that no one else gets injured or hurt or killed in a situation like this. And that's a very noble endeavor. And as far as who is responsible, there are different levels and duties of responsibility that's kind of apportioned throughout the entertainment industry. So there are a lot of people who may very well have shared in some responsibility, and the question of who is more negligible is something that can be considered, and certainly who has the most capacity to pay if they're more guilty than somebody else, then that's also going to be something that the lawyers are going to take into account. So I think this will be a very important suit for the entertainment industry, given what happened here and what we know so far about the underlying facts.
I always wonder if there's enough money in any kind of insurance policy that these movies have to cover something this awful, right? And there is now another potential. I mean, listen, there's a guy who's really, really sick in the hospital. He was bitten by a spider while tearing down that set, and that shouldn't be ignored. He's part of that production. It was a brown recluse, which is one of the most deadly spiders, and he's lost most of his arm. They're fighting for his life now, not just to save his arm. So there's more coming in this, very, very sad, story that's evolved. So, Judge Tanya, let me ask you about Alec Baldwin, because I hear this question a lot, covering law for 15 years now. The famous, they skate. Look at O.J., look at Robert Blake, look at Michael Jackson. The famous, they get away with everything. But I've also talked to Mark Garagos on how the scrutiny is even more acute when it comes to the famous, because nobody wants to be accused of giving them a pass. What do you make of that dynamic?
Well, I think your latter point, Ashleigh, is a really good one. This case is going to get so much scrutiny. It already has been scrutinized. We're only going to see that intensify as the legal proceedings develop. And I think it's really important to remember that when there are legal proceedings, that's very different than social media proceedings or media proceedings. In the legal proceedings, the facts against Alec Baldwin in this civil suit will be examined. So it's not just about the soundbite, oh, rich people get off, famous people get off. Certainly, wealth wealthy folks have an advantage in the system because they can hire great lawyers. But that really is not the end of the analysis. I mean, a lawsuit will look at duties. A lawsuit will look at obligations. A lawsuit is not simply going to examine, what is the trending hashtag on Twitter and go from there. So it's a much sharper analysis than I think we'll just get in the media or online.
So I want you guys to look at some of the things that have happened online because they're living this case out loud, right? To their credit, a lot of the people on the set are not speaking to the media, but Alec Baldwin and his wife Hilaria are talking a lot. There was Alec and Hilaria out on roadside Vermont saying all sorts of things that they probably shouldn't have said, trying to be as innocuous as possible, but it was out there. And then on social media, Alec Baldwin retweeted a 7-page defense of the costume designer. And that was really intense, saying that the charges that the production was unsafe and producers were uncaring were just not right. I mean, look at all that. That's just a huge collection of correcting the record. These producers who supposedly don't care about their crew have worked tirelessly alongside us, she said. And he tweeted that. He retweeted it. And then he tweeted something else. He said that there should be police on movie sets. And when a commenter said, yeah, that's the job of the armorer, he commented back and said, we had one of those. Judge Patricia, I can only imagine that these are things that will live in a record somewhere if he ends up in litigation. I mean, he's going to end up in litigation, right? He's already been sued. There could be criminal liability here. These are the things you'll see pop up in court, right?
Well, sometimes what you've said out of court can't always be used in court, but on occasion, you can often be cross-examined with regard to prior statements that you've made when you take a different position at trial. Now, of course, if he's going to be charged as a defendant, he has an absolute right not to testify, not to make a statement. These are not custodial statements. They're not made to the police. So I think there's probably going to be a very limited use for them, if any at all, at a trial. But people are out there. They just want to kind of spread the responsibility, because the more you can spread the responsibility, the more you can confuse the facts, the jurors, and the more likely that you can get an acquittal or a jury that's not going to, in a criminal matter that could possibly be cannot reach a verdict. So there's a lot of things that could happen, and now everybody's going to be out there talking until someone is actually charged. And you're totally right, Ashleigh. There is going to be Alec Baldwin isn't going to walk out of this scot-free, at least with charges, whether or not they hold, whether or not the evidence supports the charges as to any of them. Of course, as we're all saying here, this all remains to be seen. This is a very new case. I mean, New Mexico does not really want to. They make a lot of money on these shows, having people there filming. So they really don't want to, I would imagine, encourage a criminal liability. And as for civil responsibility, it's very nice and righteous to say, this isn't about the money, but I think if the jury came back and the judge said, why don't we all just say, I'm sorry, it won't happen again, I don't know how happy people would be with that either. So this is just so interesting and on so many different levels.
It really is. And when it comes right down to it, it's about Helena Hutchins, right? It's about this lovely young woman with such an incredibly promising career. I hope she doesn't get lost in this. That's what justice is about. Justice is about remembering these folks and making sure that there aren't more of these folks, meaning victims. Okay, Judge Michael, real quickly, I want to show you something from Sunday night in New York. The Baldwins, Alec and Hilaria, do not like the press. Alec has not liked the press for a long time. I think we all kind of know that. And so Hilaria has, it seems, taken on the henchman role, letting Alec go inside, and then she stays out and engages with the paparazzi to suggest that they shouldn't be there, and that somehow she could end up dead one day. That's my interpretation. I want you guys to have a look. Take a peek.
I hope you remember my face one day. And if something ever happens to me, because of this kind of thing, no. If something ever happens to me, remember that I asked you to stop. Remember my face in case something happens to me one day. All right.
it's all, you know, kind of interesting to watch. But in the end, is Hilaria helping the matter, Judge Michael, or is it just sort of, you know, it's just media? That's all it is.
Well, I understand how the Baldwins might want to correct the record, to deal with the incredible amount of information, whether it's accurate or not, that seems to be on the internet and what appears in the paper. So I can understand their frustration. We live in a society where the right of privacy is up for grabs, so to speak, especially in these cases. And if you happen to be a celebrity, then you may very well feel that your life has to be an open book, or others might feel that way. So I can understand their concern, because they must be getting a lot of negative remarks or threats from people on the internet, and it can be overwhelming at times. And so you talked about justice, and we want to see justice in this case. I don't think that anything that Alec Baldwin said in his remarks before would be inculpatory. I think he's trying to address allegations that haven't yet been established in court. And in all fairness to him, I don't think it's a matter of his not liking the press, but I think the press also has a responsibility to make sure that people who do have some sense of celebrity are not persecuted simply because of it.
Yeah, and I always say that the more you...
Of course.
Aren't you adorable? But I do think that the more you engage, the more paparazzi show up, because when you get that, that's gold. You know, they sell those confrontations. Yeah. It's like, if you want them to go away, just ignore them. It's the age-old lesson. Okay, guys, if you could stay put, I want you to get comfy, because we're just getting started. I don't know how you do your jobs as judges. Man. When we come back, a legal fight as old as the courtroom itself. Judges versus lawyers, but hooey, this week was a doozy. Take a look.
That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that.
I do not need an explanation. I do not need an apology. None of that. But I would suggest that we take a moment and think about the way that you're reacting to the court's instructions and rulings. We're in recess.
Is there something that I'm saying that drives the face that you're making?
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.